Ethan Hale never planned to live with someone from another planet. He was 23, working long shifts at a small repair shop on the east side of the city, and he thought his life would stay ordinary. His world was one of coffee-stained mornings and quiet nights with music humming from an old speaker. Yet the Interstellar Exchange program had other ideas. When the program announced a housing shortage for visiting scholars, a friend dared him to apply as a host. Ethan filled out the form half as a joke, never expecting a reply. Weeks later, an official letter arrived, printed on shimmering paper that carried a faint silver glow. It congratulated him for being chosen to share his apartment with a Solari researcher named Lyra. At first, he laughed and set the letter aside. Then curiosity crept in. The rent on his small two-room flat kept climbing, and he had always wanted to know if people from other worlds really smiled the way humans did. After a night of pacing and second-guessing, he typed a short message of acceptance. The day Lyra arrived, a warm spring rain washed the streets clean. Ethan stood at the doorway, unsure of what to expect. He had seen images of Solari citizens, graceful figures with silver-blue skin, but seeing her in person was different. Lyra stepped from the elevator carrying a single smooth case that shimmered like moonlight. Her eyes glowed a soft violet, bright enough to catch the dull hallway light. She was taller than he expected and moved like someone who had learned to float before she learned to walk. "Hello, Ethan Hale," she said, her voice a quiet melody. Something in her calm tone eased his nerves. "Hi," he managed, then helped her carry the case inside. The apartment suddenly felt smaller. The walls, once plain and gray, seemed to echo with her presence. She paused in the living room, tilting her head as if listening to something beyond the walls. "I hear water behind the stones," she said, meaning the old pipes that rattled whenever someone showered. They spent the first evening sharing tea and simple food. Ethan offered her a chair, but she preferred the floor, sitting cross-legged with an elegant stillness. She asked about everything: why humans painted their walls, how music could live inside a small device, why the night smelled different after rain. Her questions were gentle, never heavy, and she listened with a focus that made Ethan feel that every word mattered. As they talked, he noticed tiny flecks of light along her skin, like stars caught beneath the surface. When she laughed, the glow brightened, and for a moment he forgot she was not from Earth. Yet beneath his curiosity, Ethan felt a quiet tension. Sharing a home with a stranger was one thing. Sharing a home with someone from another world was something else entirely. What if he offended her? What if his habits, leaving shoes near the door, humming while cooking, were rude by Solari customs? That night, after she settled into the spare room, Ethan lay awake. The city outside hummed with traffic and distant sirens, but inside the apartment, there was only silence and the faint memory of her voice. He wondered what her home planet looked like. Did it have oceans like Earth or skies that burned with more than one sun? Days passed and a pattern formed. Lyra studied at a nearby research center during daylight and returned with new questions every evening. She learned to brew coffee, though she wrinkled her nose at the bitter taste. She loved Earth music, especially old jazz records Ethan had inherited from his grandfather. Sometimes she would close her eyes and sway, her faint glow pulsing to the rhythm. They cooked together too. She introduced him to Solari spices that smelled like warm rain and tasted of citrus and smoke. In return, he showed her how to fry eggs, which she called sun discs. Despite their easy companionship, Ethan sensed that Lyra watched him closely, as if trying to understand something hidden. When he caught her gaze, she would smile and look away, the soft light along her skin flickering like candle flame. One rainy evening, they sat by the window as thunder rolled across the city. Lyra spoke of the endless deserts of Sellar and the crystal rivers that glowed at night. "We travel by the stars," she said, pointing to the dark clouds beyond the glass. "But your people, you walk into storms and build homes where the ground shakes. That is brave." Her words warmed him more than the tea in his hands. He had never thought of humans as brave. Life often felt like a series of small survival acts, paying bills, catching buses, fixing what broke. Yet hearing it from her, a traveler across galaxies, made the ordinary feel powerful. Still, a sliver of unease remained. Ethan valued his privacy. He liked long showers and quiet mornings in his own skin. Now another presence filled every corner of the apartment. Sometimes, when he caught the faint glow of her room through the cracked door at night, he wondered what she truly saw when she looked at him. Late one night, while he repaired an old radio on the kitchen table, Lyra patted in silently. She watched his hands move among the wires. "You heal broken things," she said softly. "That is a kind strength." Her words struck deeper than he expected. Ethan smiled, unsure how to answer. "I just fix what I can," he said. She tilted her head. "That is what I mean." Their eyes met, and for a heartbeat the small kitchen felt like a place suspended between worlds. Ethan sensed that their shared space, fragile and ordinary, held something rare, a quiet bridge between two species. He didn't know that this fragile balance, this careful rhythm of shared tea and late-night talks would soon be shaken. He didn't know that a single, unexpected moment was waiting to test the trust they had built. For now, he only knew the steady sound of rain, the soft glow of his alien roommate across the table, and the strange new warmth growing in the silence between them. The next week brought heavy clouds that hid the sun and filled the city with gray light. Ethan had spent his evening at the small gym near the corner store, lifting weights until his arms trembled. He liked the quiet focus of exercise, the way it pushed away his restless thoughts. By the time he reached home, warm rain soaked his hoodie and ran down his neck. He shivered as he climbed the stairs, thinking only of a hot shower. Inside the apartment, the lights were low. A faint silver glow leaked from beneath Lyra's bedroom door, but Ethan assumed she was out late at the research center again. She often stayed past midnight, studying samples from distant moons or attending quiet meetings with other Solari scholars. The hallway smelled faintly of the spice she used when cooking, something like citrus mixed with smoke. Ethan kicked off his wet shoes and peeled the hoodie from his skin. Water dripped onto the floor, leaving dark spots on the old wooden boards. He grabbed a towel and headed to his room. The door clicked shut behind him, and the sound of rain on the window filled the silence. He stripped off his damp t-shirt and let it fall to the floor. The air felt cool on his back, and he sighed in relief. Muscles ached from lifting. His breath was slow and heavy. He reached for another towel and ran it across his chest, thinking about nothing more than the warm shower waiting for him. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Ethan froze. Standing in the doorway was Lyra. Her eyes glowed a gentle violet, brighter in the dim light of the hallway. She held a small tablet against her chest, the screen still lit with shifting symbols. For a long heartbeat, neither of them moved. Ethan's mind went blank. He was completely naked. "Lyra," he blurted, grabbing the nearest towel and wrapping it around his waist so quickly it slipped once before he caught it. His face burned hot even as cool air brushed his skin. I thought you were out." Lyra did not turn away. Instead, she tilted her head slightly, her gaze steady and curious. The violet light in her eyes deepened like twilight. "I returned early," she said softly. Her voice carried a calm music that both soothed and unsettled him. "I wish to show you the star map I finished, but—" She paused, her eyes traveling over him with something like wonder. "Your form, it is remarkable." Ethan blinked, unsure he heard correctly. "What? You are—" "Strong," she said, each word deliberate. "The stories I have read of humans surviving harsh worlds, it makes sense now. Your body shows it." "Courage lives there," his heart pounded. He pulled the towel tighter around his waist, wishing he could vanish into the floor. "Lyra, it's not polite to just walk in," he stammered. I need privacy." Her expression softened, but she did not look away. "I did not mean to intrude," she said gently. "On Sealer, seeing someone in natural form is not shame. It is trust." Ethan's breath caught. He searched for anger, but all he felt was a strange swirl of embarrassment and something else. Something he couldn't name. "Humans, we don't usually—" "It's different for us," he said, his voice shaky. Lyra stepped back a half pace, the glow around her skin fading to a quiet shimmer. "I understand. I will give you space." She inclined her head slightly, a Solari sign of respect he had learned over the weeks. Then she turned and slipped back into the hallway with silent grace. The door whispered shut behind her. Ethan stood there, towel clutched tight, heart still racing. The room felt suddenly smaller, filled with the echo of her calm voice. He leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. Shame prickled at him, but beneath it was another feeling he could not push away. Something like pride that someone from another world had looked at him with such wonder. He dressed quickly, but the image of her glowing eyes lingered. Later that night, he found her in the kitchen. A faint silver light circled her like a halo as she poured steaming tea into 2 cups. She looked up when he entered, her expression open and warm. "I'm sorry," she said before he could speak. "I should have waited outside the door. I will remember this human custom." Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. "It's okay, I just wasn't ready." Lyra offered him a cup. "Your people wrap themselves to hide," she said softly. "Is it because of fear?" He hesitated, staring into the swirl of steam. "Maybe. We're taught to keep some things private. It's like showing too much means losing control or being judged." She tilted her head, the faint glow in her eyes brightening. "But you are not small or weak. You are whole. On Cellar, to see another's true form is an honor. It means trust has grown." Ethan felt the words settle deep inside. No one had ever spoken about his body or any human body with such gentle respect. Not like admiration of beauty, but recognition of strength and survival. They sipped tea in silence. Outside, the rain tapped against the window like a quiet rhythm. When Ethan went to bed, he stared at the ceiling long after the lights were off. His thoughts swirled. He had been embarrassed, yes, but also strangely moved. Lyra had not looked at him with ridicule or hunger. She had looked at him as if she saw a story written in his skin. A story of storms survived and mountains climbed. He thought of her words. "Your body shows courage." The phrase warmed him in a way he couldn't explain. Humans often talked about courage as something hidden in the heart or mind, but Lyra saw it in muscle, bone, and the shape of a life lived on a hard world. Ethan realized that for the first time, someone had looked at him and seen more than an ordinary man fixing radios and paying rent. She had seen humanity itself, fragile but strong, scarred but standing. As sleep finally came, he wondered if maybe, just maybe, being human meant more than he had ever understood. And he wondered what tomorrow's conversation with his alien roommate might bring. Morning sunlight slid across the apartment floor like a slow river of gold. Ethan woke to the smell of warm spices drifting from the kitchen. His mind, still heavy with dreams, returned at once to the memory of last night. The sudden door opening, the towel clutched to his chest, and Lyra's calm, glowing eyes. For a moment he stayed in bed, staring at the ceiling. Embarrassment pressed down on him like a weight. He imagined her face, the way she had studied him, and he felt a hot blush even though no one was there to see. He wanted to hide, but the smell of spices called him toward the kitchen, and curiosity tugged harder than his shame. When he entered the kitchen, Lyra stood at the counter slicing small pieces of fruit with a knife that shimmered like crystal. The silver blue of her skin caught the light, making her look like she was carved from the morning sky. She turned and smiled, her eyes glowing gently. "Good morning, Ethan," she said in that soft, musical voice. "I made breakfast for us." He shifted awkwardly near the doorway. "Morning," he replied, his voice a little rough. He expected her to avoid the memory of the night before, but she looked calm, almost cheerful. "I hope you slept well," she continued. "I studied late and found new star maps. But I also thought about what happened yesterday." Ethan's stomach tightened. "Yes, so about that." Lyra set the knife down and faced him fully. "You need not hide," she said gently. "I honor you." The word stopped him. "Honor me?" She nodded, her eyes bright. "Your form shows the strength of your world. You live where storms cut the sky, where heat burns and cold bites. Your muscles speak of survival. I am delighted to see the truth of your species." Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, unsure how to answer. "Humans don't usually talk like that," he said. "That is your way," she said. "But on Cellar, when someone reveals their natural form, we celebrate. We tell them you are alive and we see your courage. It is a moment of joy, not shame." Her voice held no teasing, no mockery, only quiet admiration. Ethan moved to the table and sat down. His heart beat faster, but not from embarrassment this time. "It's just, where I come from, people are taught to be private," he said. "Being seen like that feels scary." "I understand," she replied. "But you are not a shadow. You are a being of storms and light. Why fear your own truth?" Her words sank deep, stirring something he didn't know he carried. They ate breakfast together in silence for a while. The fruit she prepared tasted sweet and sharp like a blend of citrus and summer rain. Each bite calmed him. He watched her hands move with quiet grace, and he noticed again the faint stars of light beneath her skin. The day stretched on with a soft rhythm. Ethan worked at his repair shop, but his thoughts kept circling back to her. Customers spoke, machines hummed, but in his mind he heard Lyra's gentle voice. You are a being of storms and light. By evening he returned home tired yet restless. Lyra was already there, sitting on the balcony with a small lantern glowing beside her. The city lights flickered like distant constellations. He joined her, leaning on the railing. It's beautiful tonight, he said. Yes, she replied, her eyes reflecting the skyline. Your world shines even when it sleeps. They stayed silent for a while, listening to the low hum of traffic below. Finally, Ethan spoke, his voice low. Last night, when you saw me, I thought I'd feel angry. But you weren't laughing or judging. You looked happy. Why? Lyra turned toward him, her violet eyes bright as twin moons. Because I saw something rare, she said. Not just a body, but the story of a world. Your kind builds cities from stone, crosses oceans, reaches stars. You endure. To witness the form that carries such spirit, it is a gift, Ethan swallowed. You really mean that? I do, she said simply. Your humanity is not hidden in clothes. It lives in your bones, your breath, your scars. It is beautiful. Her words filled the night air like a quiet song. Later they moved inside. Lyra brewed a tea that smelled of sweet earth. She poured it into 2 small cups and sat across from him at the low table. Ethan found himself speaking truths he rarely shared. I've always felt ordinary, he said. Like I'm just getting by, fixing machines, paying bills. Nothing special. She listened, her eyes steady. You fix what is broken, she said. That is not ordinary. On Cellar, healers of things are honored. You give life back to what would be lost. He looked at his hands, calloused from years of work. For the first time, he saw them as something more than tools. You make me see my own world differently, he said quietly. That is why I came, she answered. To learn, to share. To see the strength in what others overlook. Their conversation drifted late into the night. Ethan felt the distance between them shrink with every word. What had begun as embarrassment was becoming something else, something warm, a gentle respect that reached beyond planets and customs. Before sleep, Ethan paused at his bedroom door. Lyra's own door was slightly open, silver light spilling onto the hallway floor. He thought of her delight, the way she had spoken of courage and survival. For the first time in years, he felt proud of simply being human. He realized that Lyra hadn't just seen him naked. She had seen the unguarded truth of him, and instead of turning away, she had celebrated it. As he lay down, a calm warmth filled his chest. Maybe, he thought, being seen wasn't something to fear. Maybe it was the beginning of understanding, not just of each other, but of the quiet strength that lived inside them both. The days after their late-night talk felt different. Like a quiet wind had shifted in the apartment. Ethan woke each morning aware of the soft hum of Lyra's presence, her faint glow in the hallway, the gentle music of her voice when she greeted him. Yet instead of comfort, a strange unease followed him like a shadow. He told himself everything was normal. They still cooked together, shared tea, and exchanged small stories about their worlds. Lyra still filled the kitchen with the smell of Solari spices that made the air feel warm and bright. But Ethan noticed how his own heart beat faster when she entered the room. He caught himself watching the way her silver-blue skin reflected light, or the careful grace in her movements. Instead of relaxing, he felt exposed. One evening, after a long shift at the repair shop, Ethan found a note on the kitchen table. The paper shimmered with faint silver ink that pulsed like a heartbeat. You need not hide. I honor you. The message was simple, but it struck deep. He read it 3 times, then set it down. The words felt heavier than they looked. Ethan wanted to answer, but didn't know how. He sat at the table, listening to the ticking of the old wall clock. He thought about the night she had walked into his room by accident, about her eyes glowing with quiet delight. A warmth spread through him, but so did a quiet fear. That night, he stayed in his room long after dinner. He listened to Lyra moving softly around the apartment, the sound of dishes being washed, the faint hum of a Solari melody. He almost stepped out to join her, but each time he reached for the door handle, he stopped. Why am I hiding? He asked himself. The question had no easy answer. The next morning, the apartment smelled of fresh bread. Lyra was at the counter, humming a song that rose and fell like distant waves. She turned and smiled when she saw him. Good morning, Ethan, she said, her voice calm as always. Morning, he replied, forcing a smile. He wanted to sit with her, To share breakfast like before, but a knot of nerves tightened in his chest. He poured coffee and leaned against the counter instead. "You worked late?" she asked. "Yeah," he said quickly. "Busy day at the shop." She tilted her head, studying him with those gentle violet eyes. "You are quiet today." "Just tired," he lied. Lyra didn't press. She simply nodded and set a small plate of warm bread on the table. "Eat when you like," she said. Ethan thanked her and retreated to his room with the coffee. As he closed the door, a flicker of guilt passed through him. Days passed in a slow rhythm. Ethan buried himself in work, taking extra shifts, repairing broken radios and old speakers until his hands ached. He told himself he needed the money, but deep down he knew he was avoiding the apartment. At night he returned to find small notes from Lyra left on the table or taped to his door. "The stars are bright tonight. I saved you some tea. Your world's music is full of brave hearts. I honor your silence but hope you are well." Each note was written in that soft, shimmering ink. Each one made his chest tighten a little more. He read them all but never answered. One evening, a heavy storm swept through the city. Rain pounded against the windows and thunder shook the walls. Ethan came home soaked, his jacket dripping onto the floor. The apartment lights were dim, and the smell of Solari spices hung in the air. Lyra sat cross-legged on the balcony, silver light shimmering against the dark storm outside. Ethan hesitated in the doorway. The sight of her, calm and glowing against the raging sky, stirred something deep. He stepped onto the balcony, the rain's cool breath touching his face. "You'll get wet," he said. She turned, her eyes reflecting the flash of lightning. "I like the sound of your storms," she said softly. "They remind me of home." Ethan stood beside her, the storm's roar filling the silence between them. For a long moment neither spoke. Finally Lyra said, "You have been distant." Her words were gentle, but they carried the weight of truth. Ethan lowered his gaze. "I guess I have. Why?" she asked. He searched for words, but they came out heavy. "I don't know. After that night I felt strange. Like you saw something I wasn't ready to show. I felt afraid." Lyra's glow softened. "Afraid of me?" "No," he said quickly. "Not you. Afraid of being seen, of being real." She studied him for a long moment. The storm thundered behind them. "On Sealer," she said, "we believe the body tells the story of the soul. To see someone truly is to honor them." "I did not mean to bring fear." Ethan met her gaze. "I know, it's not your fault. It's just humans hide. We're taught to keep parts of ourselves private, like armor. When you saw me, I felt naked in more than one way." Lyra nodded slowly. "And now you build walls." He let out a weak laugh. "Yeah, maybe I do." She reached out, her hand glowing faintly in the dark. She didn't touch him, just let her palm hover near his. "On Sealer, when someone hides, we wait. We do not force them to open. But we remain." Her words settled into the storm's quiet rhythm. They stayed there as rain drummed against the balcony rails. Ethan felt the weight of his own fear, but also a small warmth breaking through. Lyra wasn't angry. She wasn't leaving. She was simply there, steady as the storm. For the first time in days, he let out a deep breath. "I don't want to keep hiding," he said softly. "You do not need to rush," she replied. "I will be here." Ethan looked at her glowing eyes and felt something shift inside. The distance he had built began to fade like clouds parting after a long rain. That night, as he lay in bed, the sound of the storm softened to a gentle patter. He thought about Lyra's quiet patience, the notes she left, the way she listened without judgment. He realized that what scared him was not her gaze, but the truth it reflected, that he was more than his careful habits, more than the walls he built. For the first time in a week, Ethan slept without the heavy weight of fear, and when morning light touched the apartment, he knew the space between them had begun to close. The morning after the storm felt washed clean. Sunlight spilled across the city rooftops, and the air smelled of wet earth and fresh beginnings. Ethan woke to the soft sound of Lyra humming somewhere in the apartment. The melody floated through the walls, gentle and warm, like water running over smooth stones. For a long moment he lay still, listening. The fear that had sat heavy in his chest for days felt lighter. He remembered her words on the balcony, "I will be here." They echoed in his mind like a promise. When he stepped into the kitchen, Lyra stood by the window watching a bird hop along the sill. Her silver blue skin caught the morning light and shimmered faintly. She turned and greeted him with her usual calm smile. "Good morning, Ethan," she said softly. "Morning," he replied, his voice steadier than it had been in days. They shared breakfast without rush. She poured tea scented with a sweet, earthy spice that reminded him of rain. The quiet between them was easy this time, like a gentle tide instead of a heavy silence. After they finished, Lyra looked toward the balcony, where the last raindrops clung to the railing. "Will you sit with me?" she asked. Ethan hesitated only a moment before nodding. They stepped outside together. The city below gleamed with sunlight reflecting off wet streets. A soft breeze carried the smell of rain and distant flowers. Lyra sat cross-legged on a small mat, and Ethan lowered himself beside her. For a while they said nothing. The silence felt different now, not a wall but an open space where thoughts could breathe. Finally, Ethan spoke. "I've been avoiding you," he said quietly. Lyra tilted her head, her violet eyes bright but gentle. "I noticed. I wasn't angry," he continued. "I was scared. After you saw me that night, I felt like you'd seen more than just my body. Like you saw parts of me I usually hide, and that scared me." Lyra's faint glow brightened a soft silver in the morning sun. "On Sealer," she said, "we believe that when someone is seen, truly seen, it is a gift. But I understand that on your world it may feel different." "It's strange," Ethan admitted. "Humans hide behind clothes, words, even smiles. We protect ourselves from being judged. I've always done that. But when you looked at me, you didn't judge. You just saw me." Lyra rested her hands in her lap. "I saw courage," she said simply. "Your body speaks of storms survived, of work done with care. It is not just muscle and skin. It is the story of your people." Ethan felt a warmth spread through his chest. "No one's ever said something like that to me," he said. "It is the truth," she replied. "Your kind walks through deserts, builds homes in cold winds, and still finds music and laughter. That is the strength I see." A soft breeze brushed across the balcony, carrying the distant sound of church bells. Ethan watched a cloud drift lazily across the blue sky. "I guess I've always thought of courage as something hidden inside," he said. "But you talk about it like it's written on the outside, too." Lyra smiled, her eyes glowing like small moons. "It is both. The inside and the outside are not separate. The body remembers every climb, every fall, every choice to stand again. When I saw you, I saw all of that." Ethan looked down at his hands, calloused from years of repairing old machines. For the first time, he saw them not as tired tools, but as proof of persistence. "You make me see myself differently," he said quietly. "That is what learning is," Lyra replied. "You help me see too. Your music, your storms, the way you care for broken things. All these teach me what it means to be human." Her words settled deep in his heart. They talked as the morning stretched toward noon. Lyra told him stories of Cellar, how rivers glowed beneath twin moons, how children learned to read the wind before they learned to write. She spoke of long journeys across crystal deserts where the air itself sang. Ethan listened, imagining a world where silence was music and stars were closer than clouds. He felt the distance between their worlds shrink with every story. When it was his turn, he told her about his childhood summers spent fixing radios with his grandfather, about nights lying on a rooftop watching meteor showers, about the simple pride of making broken things work again. Lyra listened with quiet attention, as if each memory was a treasure. For the first time since she arrived, he understood that being human was not about hiding. It was about standing in the open, storms and all, and choosing to share the sky. The days that followed felt lighter, as if the storm had washed more than just the city streets. Ethan noticed it first in small ways. Morning light seemed sharper. The coffee he brewed tasted richer. Even the familiar sounds of the repair shop, buzzing tools, low crackle of old speakers carried a quiet music. Each evening he returned home to find Lyra waiting with tea or new stories. Sometimes she asked about his work. Sometimes she shared fragments of Solari songs that shimmered like silver threads in the air. Their conversations stretched late into the night, weaving together the stories of two worlds. One evening, a gentle chill settled over the city. Ethan came home to find the apartment dark except for a faint glow spilling from the balcony. He stepped outside and saw Lyra seated cross-legged, her silver blue skin reflecting the rising moon. The sky above was scattered with stars, a vast ocean of quiet light. "You can see the Solari path tonight," she said softly. pointing toward a faint cluster near the horizon. It leads to my home world. Ethan sat beside her, the cool night air brushing his skin. Do you miss it? He asked. Every day, she admitted. But I also feel wonder here. Your world is fierce and alive. It teaches me things my own world cannot. They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the distant hum of traffic and the whisper of wind through the city. Lyra turned to him, her violet eyes glowing like twin moons. Ethan, she said, do you know why I chose Earth for my study? He shook his head. Why? Because humans survive. Her voice was soft but strong. Many worlds hold beauty. Many species build cities. But humans, your kind faces storms, deserts, endless cold, and still you sing. You share food with strangers. You travel beyond your sky even when the void is endless and dark. That is why I came. To understand this courage, Ethan felt her words settle deep inside him. He thought of his grandfather fixing radios through long winters, of neighbors helping each other when the city flooded, of people who kept going even when life was hard. We're not always brave, he said quietly. Sometimes we just keep moving because we have to. That, Lyra replied, is bravery, to continue when the path is unclear, to reach for light when darkness waits. That is what I see in you. Her words warmed him like a fire in winter. He looked up at the sky, at the countless stars that stretched into forever, and for the first time he felt proud of the small, ordinary life he lived. Later that night they walked through the quiet streets. Rain had left puddles that reflected the city lights like broken mirrors. Lyra paused often to look at the reflections, her glow mixing with the neon signs above. Your world carries its history in every stone, she said. Even the cracks tell a story. Ethan smiled. It's not perfect, he said. We make mistakes all the time. Perfection is not life, she answered. Struggle is life. And you endure. They stopped at a small park where trees dripped silver from the recent rain. A breeze moved through the leaves with a sound like distant music. Ethan felt a quiet strength in the moment, as if the earth itself was breathing with them. When they returned to the apartment, Lyra brewed a tea that smelled like warm citrus. They sat across from each other at the low table, the only light coming from a single candle. Ethan finally spoke the thought that had been building inside him. I used to think humans were small, he said. Just ordinary. We build things, we break things, we fix them again. But you make me see it differently. Maybe just getting through the day is its own kind of strength? Lyra nodded, her eyes glowing softly. It is. You live in a world of storms and still find reasons to laugh. You care for each other even when you have little. That is greatness. He looked at his hands, rough from years of repairs, and felt a quiet pride. As midnight neared, Lyra brought out her small star map device. Tiny points of light rose in the air between them, forming constellations from both Earth and Sealer. She reached out and guided his finger through the map, tracing paths of distant stars. Every world has its struggles, she said. But humans, you choose hope again and again. That is what binds the stars to you. Ethan felt something awaken inside, a deep recognition that being human was not a weakness, but a gift. We try, he said softly, even when it's hard. And that, Lyra said, touching his hand lightly, is why humanity shines brighter than you know. The warmth of her touch was gentle but steady, like the heartbeat of the universe. They sat together as the star map slowly faded, leaving only the candle's soft glow. Outside, the city slept beneath a sky filled with countless possibilities. Ethan realized that the embarrassment of that first accidental meeting had turned into something far greater. Lyra hadn't just seen him naked. She had seen his humanity, the quiet, stubborn courage that lived in every scar, every breath, every choice to keep going. He looked at her glowing eyes and felt no fear, only a deep connection that stretched beyond worlds. Thank you, he said, for seeing us. For seeing me. Lyra smiled, the faint silver light around her brightening like dawn. It is easy to see what shines, she said. Ethan smiled back, a calm strength filling him. He understood now that humanity's power wasn't in ships or machines. It was in the simple decision to face the unknown with hope, to keep walking through storms, to keep singing beneath endless skies. And in that quiet moment under a universe of stars, Ethan felt the truth of what it meant to be human, fragile yet unbreakable, small yet infinite. The next morning carried a strange, gentle calm. Soft light poured across the apartment walls, painting them gold. Ethan woke early, the scent of fresh rain still clinging to the air. For a while he lay there, listening to the city breathe, thinking about everything that had happened since Lyra first arrived. She had come from across the stars, a visitor from a world he could barely imagine. Yet she had become part of his daily life, sharing tea, stories, quiet moments on the balcony. What began with shock and awkwardness had turned into something deeper: trust, understanding, and a friendship that felt as wide as the night sky. When Ethan stepped into the kitchen, he found Lyra already awake. She stood near the window, a soft silver glow tracing her outline. She turned as he entered, her eyes bright like small moons. "Good morning," she said. "Morning," he replied, smiling. "You're up early." "I wanted to watch the sunrise," she explained. "Your sun is warm. It feels like a welcome." They shared breakfast in easy silence. The quiet no longer felt heavy. It felt like a gentle song only they could hear. After they finished, Lyra placed a small crystal device on the table. Its faint light pulsed like a slow heartbeat. "My ship will call soon," she said softly. "The research team has finished its orbit. I must return in 2 nights," the words settled between them. Ethan felt a sudden ache, sharp and unexpected. He had known she would leave eventually, but hearing it made the truth real. They spent the day walking through the city. Lyra wanted to see everything one last time. The crowded market where spices colored the air, the quiet park where children played, the narrow streets where old radios hummed in dusty shops. Ethan watched her take it all in, the sounds, the scents, the human chaos that never stopped. She moved with quiet grace, her faint glow catching the eyes of passers-by who likely thought it was only a trick of the sunlight. At a small cafe, they shared warm bread and sweet tea. Lyra listened to the chatter around them with a soft smile. "Your people sing even when they do not know they are singing," she said. "Every voice, every laugh is music." Ethan nodded, feeling both proud and sad. "I'll miss this," he admitted. "I'll miss you." Lyra reached across the table, placing her cool, luminous hand over his. "I will miss you too," she said. "But the stars are wide, and connection does not end with distance." That evening, they returned to the apartment balcony. The city stretched below them, alive with lights and sounds. The air smelled of rain and blooming flowers. Ethan leaned against the railing, watching the sky shift to deep blue. "When you first came here," he said, "I thought of humans as small, just one world in a huge universe. But now I think maybe we're bigger than I knew." Lyra stood beside him, her silver blue skin shimmering in the fading light. "You are," she said. "Your courage is not in how far you travel, but in how deeply you care. You build hope from dust. You choose kindness in the face of fear. That is greatness." He turned to her, his heart heavy and bright at once. "You make me believe it," he said quietly. "And you made me see," she replied, "that strength can be gentle." Night deepened. Lyra brought out her small star map, the device casting tiny lights across the balcony like a floating constellation. She guided Ethan's hand to trace the Solari path across the dark sky. "Somewhere out there is my home," she said, "and somewhere here is yours. Yet in this moment we stand together. The universe is not so wide when hearts meet." Ethan watched the stars sparkle above them. "Will you come back?" he asked. Her eyes glowed softly. "I cannot promise. But I will carry this place with me. I will carry you." The words filled him with a quiet warmth. On her last night, a gentle wind moved through the city. Ethan waited with her on the balcony as the starship signaled from the upper atmosphere, a faint pulse of light across the horizon. "You are ready," Lyra said. "The universe is full of unknowns, but humans belong among the stars."